Thank you for joining today's webinar, Lower Your TCO for COBOL Applications, presented by Walter Sweat. There are a few housekeeping items that I want to make you aware of before we introduce today's speaker. Participants today will be in a listen-only mode. We will record the webinar. There will be a brief questions and answer session at the conclusion of today's webcast. During the presentation, we highly encourage you to submit questions, and that you can do that by leveraging the Q&A panel, which is in your primary docking window, and it's usually off to the right side of your screen. At this time, I am pleased to introduce Walter Sweat. Walter is a 25-year veteran in the enterprise modernization space. Walter has collaborated with an impressive list of global fortune companies to intelligently modernize legacy mainframe infrastructures for new business initiatives. Walter provides practical, sound, technical, and strategic vision for organizations that seek a way to implement cost-effective modernization strategies within their enterprises. And at this time, I'm excited to introduce Walter Sweat. Walter, welcome.
Marge, as always, thank you very much, and thank everybody for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and sit with us while we talk about alternatives for people who are looking to move from one COBOL to another. Let me just click right here. Many of you are existing Micro Focus customers, I know, from looking at the register list. Who probably for whatever reason are looking for alternatives for your both existing and new applications. And what we would like to cover in the next 30 minutes or so is how you might want to consider GT Software and our role as the exclusive worldwide distributor for Fujitsu's Netcobol as you look at alternatives. We'll talk about how you might go about such a migration and also the benefits. And we want to talk about how you can keep your risk to a minimum. I just bet that the majority of you have long-standing applications that really make up at least one of the cornerstones of your business. Keeping those applications working as they always have been, and to make that happen is obviously very critical. We recognize that, and we know that you do as well. Risk is obviously one important component of any migration, and so is cost, keeping costs to a minimum. So I want to share with you some ways that Fujitsu's Netcobol lets you really control your costs as your business continues to grow. Excuse me, got a little bit of a cold. And the old saying of you don't know what you don't know is certainly true in COBOL conversions, and we can help you scope the level of that effort. And lastly, I want to describe the conversion services which we hope could be of help to you. So that's kind of the agenda for this session. And with that, we'll presentation. First, why would you even want to consider converting your applications away from Micro Focus? To do with cost and cost savings. Now, I come from a background where I was a Micro Focus user for 13 years. They obviously have some wonderful products, and if most people didn't have to worry about cost, they would probably be perfectly content to stay where they are. But every dollar that you have to spend makes obtaining that solid ROI that we all find so important that much more challenging. And if you're competing against other companies in providing software to your customers, if your customers have to pay runtime fees for the right to run your software, and they don't have to pay runtime fees for the right to run your competitor's software, very much at a competitive disadvantage then. And if you're developing software for use in your own company, every dollar you spend on runtime fees is a dollar you don't have available for this. Maybe it's finding new tools to help your developers be more productive. Maybe it's software tools that make your user experience that much easier that you can't really afford to put into place because you're having to pay runtime fees. For many companies, the cost of running your software is obviously a very significant expense, and it's ongoing. You may have developed a program 20 years ago and not have changed it once since then. I know that there's code that we've all written out there that's been around forever that still runs exactly as it always has. That's the beauty. Consistent, it runs well, it performs well. So it can run for a long, long time. Well, our thought is, does it make sense to have to pay runtime fees every time a new user of that program comes along, whether it's in-house or a customer of yours? That can make it harder to sell your software. And if you sell your software, you have to either eat the cost of the runtime fees or you have to pass it along to your customers, raising the fees that you charge. Now, this also may not have happened to you, but we know for many customers it has. It's both time-consuming and challenging to keep up with runtime has been deployed and still have to worry maybe about being audited to keep up with the proof of where you have deployed these applications. Many companies really have been audited based on those deployed runtimes, runtime licenses, just in people time. The question really becomes, what is that cost? And is it something that you want to continue to absorb? So managing the distribution of finding it harder to sell your software because of the runtime fees and being able to keep control of those significant portions of your ongoing expenses, we think are reasons that people come to us day in and day out looking to convert to Netcobol. Now, in conversions, the way I look at it, risks and cost are kings, and they need to be kept in balance. Manually changing code takes time, and it introduces risk. However, sometimes that really is the only way to go, and it can still be beneficial. But we just all need to be aware that risk is a component that increases as you manually have to change things. What we propose is a solution that allows you to continue coding with the microfocus formats that you've always used, and then letting our tooling just dynamically convert those syntax elements that have to do Netcobol. Similarly, we've also, always felt that at least 50% of a system conversion relates to the changing of a company's data. Question becomes, I think, what if you could leave your data? That would obviously save you time in migration and lower your risk. You're able to get a safer, better looking ROI in a much shorter time frame. If you don't have to worry about differences in compilers, and there are differences in all code, then you again are lowering your risk. Keeping things the same when possible always makes sense then. Sometimes it won't be possible, but it is important to see where that, in terms of keeping the code exactly the same and letting tooling take care of the differences for you automatically. Our experience has been that the more use of a compiler's intrinsics that you use, the more challenging it is to convert and take advantage of new opportunities. Being able to slowly weed those intrinsics out of your code rather than having to do so in a big bang approach helps you be much, much more flexible. So you're more prepared for change then. So what we're talking about when we say lower risk is to look at tooling that can assist you if you don't want to go through a manual process of converting from one COBOL to another. Let that tooling let you work with your existing data files so you don't have to convert them. Let it let you continue that you're used to working with so that you don't have to make those changes, keeping risk at a minimum. So what are the ways you can save money? If you do development in languages other than COBOL, do you have to pay for the right for your users or your customers to run your applications? If you develop in C# or VB.NET or C++ or Java, are there fees for runtimes there? No, of course there aren't. So even though you've already deployed your applications to an existing customer or user base, being able to know going forward that there are no more runtime fees is huge. So for those existing applications and users, that's a one and done. And if your business is growing and you want to spin up a new server so that you can make your applications more accessible, pay again for the right to run that same application. Would it not make more sense to say that no matter how many server instances you deploy to, you know what the runtime cost will be? 0. We've talked to some to talk to us because they were shocked and dismayed, discouraged to see what new runtime deployment licenses were going to cost them, to the point that they could not deploy their applications. They felt totally out of control. And obviously, in this challenging economy, being in control of your costs is very, very important. So knowing how to control your costs, being able to grow your business in the way that you need without having to worry about if it's going to break the bank if you add a new server instance, or if you add new customers, that it's going to be easier to work with them, is very important and can save you a ton of money. Excuse me. So wanting to move to excuse me so much. So wanting to one that makes better economical sense to you and not having a feel for the time and cost to do so is challenging. What we're talking about is having tooling that will help you move from Micro Focus NetExpress to Fujitsu's Netcobol. While we don't support all Micro Focus extensions, we do support many of them, and we can help you to find which ones are easy, which ones are hard changes. And if it makes sense for you to manually go make those changes, we can assist you in determining how best to make them. And if you're interested in automated conversions, we can help you understand how well our automated conversion tool can make life easier for you. Analyzing your current environment and planning your migration path is important as you consider your alternatives. So one of the things we like to be able to provide is assistance for customers who are to NetExpress, where we can help you analyze your existing code, define those things that are easy to migrate, those things that aren't as easy. And we provide tooling that will allow you to either keep your data exactly as it is today, keep your syntax, still working with the Micro Focus syntax format, but work with a Netcobol compiler where things are just dynamically changed for you. We also provide services that will allow you, if you wanted to go through, I don't know, one application to define those most common used intrinsics that Micro Focus provides and help convert those automatically. So that flexibility is very important, and planning, as it says here, is really part of the key. There is no one right or best way to go through a migration. Where you're starting and what the level of effort is helps you determine what the costs are and what your potential ROI is. So those are important components that we relish the chance to work with customers as they look to migrate. So these conversion services that I've talked about, they're an exclusive migration solution that we have put, and we all know that in a migration, there will be things that are not handled automatically, so we recognize that there is still work involved. However, we of the effort that's required in an effort to help you minimize the risk and at the same time help you plan to keeping your costs under control. By providing these services and tools, we want to help you find ways and effective. And by making this conversion automated, keeping your data unchanged, you get to where you want to go quicker. Letting your developers code as they always have without having to worry about syntax differences is a huge time and cost saver. You know, there's just standard tooling that you can work with editors to make changes, and some of them are obviously very easy and some of them are hard. I'll give you a couple of examples. Micro Focus, for instance, allows field names to be greater than 30 characters long, and that's perfectly fine. Most COBOL compilers follow the ANSI standard that say that field names should be 30 characters. just think about the level of effort of going through and identifying where all of those field names are that are greater than 30 characters. Maybe they're defined in a copybook. Maybe they're part of a copy replacing statement where you can't easily see where those things are. So one of our conversion tools where you get to leave your syntax unchanged would support that for you pretty much automatically, where you wouldn't have to make that change by hand and effort, just the effort involved in looking for something like that. Other examples of using an if then else kind of compile option where you can specify whether something should exist can be automatically handled where it's not supported right out of the box by the Fujitsu Netcobol compiler. That gives you the ability to still code in the way that you always have. But if you want to get away from those things and make your compiler more ANSI standard so it's more portable in the future, we also provide the services that will allow you to do that, to make those changes on a once and done kind of effort. So flexibility is key, but the most important thing is trying to get a feel for what you can expect to run into. The Fujitsu Netcobol compiler is a very, very, very well-performing, solid, mainframe type compiler. It was developed back in the days of the old Amdahl mainframe and has modernized over the years, but it's kept its consistency and its ability to perform very, very well. It does very much follow the ANSI rules, and one of the nice things about that is you never have things that happen where you can't quite explain why they work the way that they do. One of the things that I feel is important is if performance is important to you, and if consistency is important to you, and obviously if controlling costs are important to you, then Fujitsu Netcobol compiler is a great thing to consider. So I hope that some of these things are of benefit for you to think about, and that you've given thought to, if you wanted to look for alternatives to your current environment, that GT software with the Netcobol compiler can be of assistance to you. Obviously, we would love to be able to answer any questions that you have, and if you would like us to help you analyze your current environment, we're delighted to do that, to help you get a feel for what both the cost savings and the net benefit to you could be if you considered a migration. So with that, I think we have a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm just going to throw the door open to that. And Marge, if you can help me identify any questions, we'll see if we can get them answered, okay?
Sure, sounds great. So the first one is, why doesn't Fujitsu charge runtime fees?
Great question. It has been part of Fujitsu's heritage to be very open with their customers, and as they have looked at other development languages, the history of development languages over the years is that people have come to expect flexibility, agility, and mobility in deploying their applications in a consistent manner. So it's kind of a cultural thing that says that they want to provide an environment that allows companies to run their business the way that they need to, just as they would with any other language. As I mentioned earlier, sorry Marge, if you look at any of the other development languages that are so popular today, C++, C#, Java, that's one of the beauties in that you can run those wherever you need to make them an integral of the way you do your business.
Great. I actually have 2 to 3 more.
Okay.
One is, and if, a lot are coming in all of a sudden. If you cannot get lines, so just let me know if it's a long explanation or short.
Okay.
Can NetExpress and Microfocus Visual, I think it's Microfocus Visual COBOL runtimes coexist in the same server and application with Netcobol runtimes?
We have never seen a conflict. It's impossible to say that there's not some case out there where there could be a conflict. To my knowledge, the new NetExpress environment can run at the same place and location with the Fujitsu Netcobol runtime.
Great. It says your last data unchanged. Can Fujitsu read and update Micro Focus data files?
There are two alternatives. In the past, what we have done, and what most companies have done when they've worked with customers who were migrating from one environment to another, we would have converted the data to our native format. And as everyone probably knows, the way to do that is to take data, if it were indexed, for instance, to move it to a sequential format, and then use our tooling to import that in.
Correct.
With some of the tooling that we provide today, Marge, we actually can allow people to leave that data untouched, Micro Focus format, and by interfacing via an external file handler, our native COBOL could talk to what was Micro Focus index file format process and time of converting it.
Okay. I have two more. Which NetExpress apps do you know are easily translated?
I'll try to answer that the other way. I'll say the ones that are more difficult to are any that relate to dialogue system. We have tooling in place that will get people very close with dialogue system. Dialogue system's a great environment. It's been around obviously for years and years and years, but the conversion of the look and feel is not really difficult. The conversion of the is the challenging part, and we do have tooling that can assist with that, but that's usually an application area that's a little more difficult. Similarly, if people are using some of the more hard calls to XAF or the calls to the 90 number hex assemblies that Micro Focus provides, we do support some of those. We do not support all of those. But things that have to do with direct control of the screen and the mouse, those are a little more challenging. But things like the Micro Focus CBO underscore routines, we support those, and people can work well with those. In general, a batch type application had customers be very, very successful in converting. If they are just mainly processing data and they're using standard COBOL ways of doing it, those are usually quite easy conversions. As you get to the more graphical applications, those can be a bit more challenging.
Okay, great. And this is kind of a two-part question. It says, we are using Netcobol for .NET. We already spend a huge effort to convert from MF to Fujitsu, but trying to identify the differences by ourselves, not in production yet, starting test. Is it possible to use your tools to reduce the risk of conversion?
Great question. Yes, I would say that it would be because we can provide an analysis that will go through your code if we can have access to it, that would look at those things that we know can present challenges. It's just as important, while it's important to be able to change the things that we can, being able to identify those things that we know would cause manual changes can be every bit as important. So yes, I would like to think that it would be of an assistance to be able to have our tools look at your code to find those things for you quicker.
Okay. Does the Micro Focus, I think it's supposed to be conversion tools, convert to NetExpress for .NET?
They are to Netcobol for Windows today. Netcobol for .NET will be on the horizon. Netcobol for .NET is a very important platform for us, and we obviously want to, duplicate the efforts that we have done to take things to a .NET environment. But today we're talking about Netcobol for Windows.
Okay, great.
Those were excellent questions. Any more, or is that kind of covered it for us for today?
I think that's it. It does say one person asking, should I use second link for contact? So I'm a little confused. If you want to go to netcobol@gtsoftware.com, you can contact us that way. Or you can use the second link to receive a free COBOL analysis. And if we need to get that out to us, just send us a note at netcobol@gtsoftware.com and ask for the actual Netcobol free analysis link, and we'll make sure that gets out to you.
Okay, excellent, Marge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your time. Again, feel free to reach back out to us. This is being recorded, and you shall receive in about 2 hours the recorded link to the webinar. And as always, Walter, thanks for your expertise and just your great answers.
Marge, it was a pleasure. Thank everybody for being here today. Again, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules, and we hope that this was helpful. And we look forward to the opportunity to getting to talk to each of you and seeing if we can be of help in any way. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.